So I like to share a little bit of how even why I've been doing career counseling, my whole professional life, and why this really came to me, this importance. And there's not much written about emotions and search. And what I always say is there are, I'm sure you've seen, just hundreds and hundreds of books on resume, cover letter, how to find your dream career, but not so much related to the emotions. And one time, this is years ago, I didn't even say how long, this came to me probably 7 years ago. And a client of mine, kind of a longer term client, he was struggling. He was actually a master's level graduate from Carnegie Mellon. And he wrote to me, and he had some other barriers going on. And he replied to one of my newsletters and said, Karen, can you give me any encouragement or words of hope? And career counselors, we're busy more with the career goals and the job search. And I feel like wanted to give a little more encouragement. And I looked online, I couldn't find anything. I came up with just a couple quotes, general quotes on hope. And that's what really caused me to sort of think about this. And then the whole book came to me during a weekend retreat. It sort of downloaded. And so I want to share a story because when I wrote this, I thought, oh, this is probably more for struggling job seekers, people who've maybe been in the job search for a long time or struggling with career decision, maybe have a barrier, whether it's a gap in employment or age or otherwise. I even had an intern of mine in the last summer, who said, Karen, this would be great for college graduates. And I'm thinking, I don't know, because college graduates are all like happy and optimistic, and they're probably not going to think they need this. And then the week before I started doing these programs, because I'm doing this virtual job club tour, my neighbor, Bob Hausman, wrote a Facebook post. I have his permission to share his picture and his story. And in exchange, because he is a recent author of a book, he said, well, yeah, Karen, you can share it. Just put my QR code here for my book, which is Cognitive Science for Educators, just in case anyone knows any teachers. So a call out to Bob. But what he did, and I love this, he wrote this story on Facebook. And he said, in an effort to normalize failure, I wanted to share the rocky path to my current job. And I'm telling this story because he's a PhD cognitive scientist, quite successful. And he has ups and downs. Everyone has ups and downs. It's natural, normal. So I'm going to read a couple excerpts because it's a long thing. He wrote quite a moving story. He says, I started to look for a new job about 3 years ago. Time, is significant. And he went through multiple screenings, completed several take-home assignments, even participated in some Zoom interviews. He was so excited, Caps, to finally get a face-to-face interview with my dream job company, but I was ultimately turned down. When I got the call, I was crushed, Caps. Yes, there were actual tears and maybe even a little bit of self-loathing. Picked myself up, dusted myself off, continued to put myself out there. And he said, there's another one. His confidence was rocked again. And how could they not want me, he writes. And then he did move on, and his job was through networking. So plug to this, because I'm sure your support group is big on networking, and that's how he did get the job. And he says, don't ever give up on yourself. Your path is unique. Someone out there is looking for someone exactly like you. Just keep going. And I just wanted to share Bob's story because people of all backgrounds struggle, and to not try to be down on yourself related to that. So here's that roller coaster that we've seen: hope, fear, a mixture of things. And of course, a little bit hidden at the bottom there is rejection. So in terms of moving forward and coping, I want to share, we're going to talk about dealing with emotions and then move on to the resilience and coping strategy. So one strategy is about preparing. There was a Forbes 2020 article called Part of the Job Search No One Talks About That Can Make or Break Your Success. And one of their big points was knowing the data. to prepare yourself. So I'm going to ask Gaddafi to launch a first poll here dealing with data so that you can sort of take your stab at this, because we can feel so discouraged and so alone. And so there are multiple ways I'll be talking about dealing with emotions, but sometimes if you know the data, then it's not as demoralizing to you in a personal way. Right. So the average number of interviews secured per 100 applications. So you just have one choice there, 10 to 20, and you can vote anytime, 10 to 20 interviews, 20 to 30 interviews, 4 to 8 interviews. So we'll give this a little more time. You can, so the correct answer actually is A, 10 to 20 interviews. And so others are more discouraged, because like, hey, I'm not hearing back at all. But even 10 to 20 interviews is kind of discouraging. So what you're doing is trying to expect that for every 10 applications you put out, 8 or 9 are going to be rejected. So when you get that rejection, it's in your head, maybe it can help you to say, right, of course, there's another rejection. I need to get through maybe 8 of them before I get good news. And so it's trying to help yourself not get discouraged. So you can go ahead and we'll move to a second poll here and call out to Gaddafi. You've got quite an amazing group that actually has tech support. That makes a presenter very happy in relation to that. Okay, the average applications received for any advertised job. I want to say that you can go ahead and vote 75, 118, 205, or 250. These are all pre-pandemic numbers. There were not really any post-pandemic numbers, but to realize the unemployment rate is actually similar and a little lower than pre-pandemic here. So we've got 205, 250s leaving here. 118 pops onto the screen. So I'm going to share that 118 is an interesting number because it's the only number I could find that was recent, but I'm a geek. And so I looked at that 118 number that I found from a 2022 article, but it's actually from 2013. So that 118 is not the right number. And the 250 group wins. 250 is kind of the overall accepted rate. I have seen it written up as for corporate jobs. This is from Zippia. The other one was from Zip Jobs, by the way. And so there's often a funnel schematic that you see that when you think about it, there's 250 people applying, 10 people might get phone screens, 4 to 5 might meet in person for a first interview, 2 to 3 second interview, only 1 successful. So again, it's just realizing the numbers. So you could go ahead and end the poll. Thank you all for participating. And what the Harvard Business Review said about this whole data piece that the Forbes article mentioned is to know what's coming is part of dealing with emotion so that you can say to yourself, I knew there would be days where nothing is happening. And today is just one of those days again. So I'm going to move back to the PowerPoint. I'm still seeing the poll. I don't know if others are or not, or, oh, I could X out of it. Might have been me. All right. So couple next pieces here are to know, as I've said before, emotions are normal and natural here. And you do need to feel them, feeling them and accepting them. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh who I listened to, and he said, not feeling and not accepting emotions are the root of suffering. So you do need, realize you're not alone, and then move forward with feeling and accepting them. Thanks, Sasha, for your information there. Coping is, coping in some ways is necessary. As a matter of fact, the whole second piece of this about resilience is all about coping. But sometimes coping is still like putting a Band-Aid on it, I think, because you have to kind of eventually go deeper than feeling, accepting, and coping, processing that, and then really letting go of the negative emotions, because again, they definitely can seep out, um, as was noted earlier. And one of the things for letting go, a story that comes up for me, is I was coming out of a job fair where I was a speaker, and one of the employers was there. We were on our way to our cars, and I knew her, and she asked me about what I was doing. I told her about the book. She goes, "Oh, people really need that. I have people coming up to me at the fair saying, yeah, I applied online 3 times and I've never heard back, and so that, she's like, I'm not going to be looking at that candidate." So you really do have to manage emotions and let go. Um, and that at some point, it might be hard to do that. And so professional counseling is something to keep in mind as well.